All right. Good afternoon, and I'll bring the Commerce Committee to order. Welcome, colleagues. Nice to see all of you here today. We only have one bill today, and that bill is Senate Bill 4, relative to commercial property assessed clean energy and resiliency, or the CPACER bill. And as the prime sponsor, I'm going to introduce it, so I will hand the gavel to my able colleague, Senator Murphy. Right. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Senator Dan Innes, representing District 7. I'm from the town of Bradford, New Hampshire. And I'm happy to present to you today Senate Bill 3 or 4, is it? 4. I just said it. We had Senate Bill 4. I guess we're rusty. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. I'm rusty. This is a bill designed to really streamline a funding process that should enable more construction to take place, particularly multi-unit housing. And CPACE refers to commercial property assessed clean energy programs. And it's funding that's provided around the energy portion of building projects. Money is provided by private lenders, municipal bonds, public funds. And the financing is set up such that building owners can borrow money for energy efficiency, renewable energy, and other projects. And that financing is repaid through a property tax assessment. So the money comes back. CPACE is only available in states with enabling legislation and active programs. Typically, local governments administer the program and handle the approvals and so on. In this case, CPACE really applies to commercial buildings, multifamily housing developments. It effectively reduces upfront costs because some of those upfront costs are financed. Because that financing is there, it frees up capital for other projects. Long-term fixed rate financing is available, and it creates a positive cash flow from those energy investments. And really, we look at it as one more tool in the toolbox to address the housing situation. So the statutory revisions that are part of this bill, we introduced the BFA, the Business Finance Authority, as a central administrator to streamline the program and relieve that burden from municipalities. And there are a number of technical issues with the way the statute was originally written. This bill cleans that up and will make it easier for builders to access the program. So far, no one's done it in New Hampshire. And the hope is that after we streamline the process, make things a little bit better, we'll be in pretty good shape here. Key stakeholders have looked at the revisions, and those stakeholders include the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority, the New Hampshire Bankers Association, the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and the National CPACE Alliance. There are some folks who will be following behind me who can address the details of the bill. And I'm happy to take any broad questions, but if you have specific technical questions, probably better reserved for those who follow me.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Innes.
Thank you.
The chair will call James Key Wallace.
James P. Wallace. He is.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think I know who you are.
And I apologize, I just got here, so I couldn't sign up in advance. Let me tell you a little bit about what CPACE is beyond what you just heard from the chairman and why we're doing this. CPACE effectively takes every energy component part of a building project, takes it out of the first mortgage, and puts it in a second mortgage that has the equivalency of or the priority of a municipal tax lien. And what does that do? Let me give you this practical example. In a $10 million project, a lender would like you to have $3 million down and a $7 million first. If $2 million of your project is energy, and you take that out, your first mortgage becomes a 5. Your lender likes that smaller mortgage. Behind him or her is a second mortgage for the energy components. Now, who in their right mind would lend a second mortgage that, by the way, is usually non-recourse, no liability, and is behind the first. Why would you do that? Because it has a longer amortization period, 30 to 40 years, gets a higher interest rate, and because it has the same practical effect as a tax lien, you know you're going to get paid. So it's a great investment. And how this came about, I deal with a number of lenders, but Service Credit Union lends in many states. And they came to me a couple of years ago and said, New Hampshire passed a CPACE law some number of years ago, and do you know that no one has ever been able to use it? I go, wow, that's a great law. What do you mean? Why haven't you used it? When it was first passed, the bankers and the municipal association were very concerned about the burden and how it would work. So there were so many caveats put in it that it effectively was unworkable. So when Service Credit Union approached me, the practical effect being you can drop a down payment. If you're a Concord Area Trust for Community Housing or Dick Anagnost or Brady Sullivan, instead of putting 30% down, if you take that energy component out, it becomes part of the capital stack, and it means you may only have to put 15 or 20% down. So I personally think this is probably the single best tool you will have an opportunity to pass this session that can increase the amount of housing being built in short order because it reduces the equity and down payment you need for that first mortgage. So after I worked through this and remembered when the first law went in, I think I was on the BFA then, I assigned it to the talent and the brains and our executive director, and James Key Wallace worked with the bankers, the municipal association, the BIA, everyone else to make sure that there wasn't a burden on any municipality. They don't have to do anything other than to opt in, that it didn't affect the first priority of any mortgage. And through all that work, we have an agreed upon bill that's longer than I like to see them. But if this passes and becomes law, I predict you will find that it will be just like when we created the CDFA or when we changed 79E. This will be one of the most effective things you can have because it will reduce those down payments and allow developers, profit and not-for-profit, to generate more projects. And that is the Vanna White view of this bill, and I am Vanna. Here's the expert.
Okay. Mr. Sajak.
All right. Well,
Mr.
good.
Key Wallace, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, I'm James Key Wallace. I'm the Executive Director of the state's Business Finance Authority. We've had no real role in CPACE up until I was asked to take a look at it. A couple things I just like to kind of get off, right off the bat. So, because these are the common questions, are, what does this cost? The answer is zero. It requires zero appropriation, zero impact on the budget, nothing to taxpayers. It'll be run by the BFA, which is a self-funded entity that doesn't have any taxpayer money that supports it. So it doesn't cost anything. The other thing I want to get out right off the bat is this is 100% voluntary. This is a private lending program, right? So private lenders are lending money to private developments and only in communities that choose to opt in to the program. So there's no mandates, doesn't force anyone to do anything. We think this is a great tool, but it is 100% voluntary, and we think people will choose to do it. Other states that have CPACE, New Hampshire already has CPACE, it just needs some fixing. There's 22-ish states, I think probably soon to be 30 that have active CPACE programs. They're receiving hundreds of millions of dollars a year in capital investments into the energy portions of new development. So, New Hampshire is excited to be joining that table. The key things that this did were a whole slew of technical changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about what's in the bill. But you have a bunch of technical issues which are addressed, and then you have this concept of the BFA as central administrator. And what that really means is, under current law, every town in New Hampshire has to do this themselves, right? Make their own documents, run their own programs, do the billing, the compliance, the tracking. And if you're from, you grew up like I did in Greenfield, New Hampshire, where it was just a couple of volunteers trying to, work with the town, at least back then, that it's just a big ask. So every state that does this well finds a group to do it, helps the towns at no cost to them to kind of guide both the lender and the project and the municipality through the project. And so that's what the BFA would do, like we do with other programs today.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Questions? None? I just have a quick one. What were the biggest impediments for builders accessing this money previously? What are the things a couple things that we're fixing that really make it easier?
Yeah, good question. I mean, okay, so,
Sorry.
so I'll just name a technical one right off the bat, right? So the existing law says that the CPACE provider has to file a mortgage. Like, it's in statute. The whole point of CPACE is that your loan is actually repaid through your tax bill.
Right.
Right? It's explicitly not a mortgage, right? And that one word completely prevents transactions from going forward. And it was just, it was a nomenclature thing, but it was important.
Okay. Very good.
That's
helpful.
just an example.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Other questions? All right. Thank you both very much. Appreciate it.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Great to see you all.
Good to see you. Thank you. The next person who's indicated they'd like to speak is Sam Evans Brown. Yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the committee. I'm Sam Evans Brown, Executive Director of Clean Energy New Hampshire. We're in support of this bill. Generally speaking, I just want to express how tickled I am to see this proceeding. One of my first career experiences as a cub reporter in New Hampshire was actually trying to cover the nascent CPACE program after it passed in 2010. And when the then executive director of the Jordan Institute was doing sort of a goodwill tour around the state, trying to get towns to bite and create CPACE districts and create CPACE programs, and was finding absolutely no luck. I remember her pleading with me not to do the story because she didn't want to spook any of the towns that were considering entering the water. And as I've taken on this role and been involved in previous attempts to sort of reboot the CPACE program and get it working, I've learned a little bit. I'm not a finance guy. I'm an energy guy. I've learned just enough to be dangerous through this process. But I would just say, from a general standpoint, I think that the process that has led us to this point really is the best example of New Hampshire politics at its finest. Smart people coming up with a common sense solution, trying to make it work, engaging with each other proactively ahead of time. So very, very tickled. The only other thing I'd say is that from my perspective, as an organization that's working to support energy efficiency and renewable energy investments, the general challenge with these types of investments is that they have high upfront capital costs that are amortized out over a very long period. They all pay for themselves, but you have to have the upfront capital. And so generally speaking, you're swapping the cost of fuel for the costs of finance. And insofar as there are solutions that can bring low-cost finance, we're going to see more and more of these types of investments because they pay for themselves, because these technologies have gotten so good, particularly over the course of the past decade. So really thrilled to see this proceeding, in full support, and thanks for the time.
All right. Any questions? All right. Seeing none. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. That's all I have for speakers. There are a number of other names here listed in support. If I've missed anyone who would like to speak, please come forward. All right. Well, no. I think what we will do with this one, because it's got a lot happening with it, is plan to exec it on Tuesday after we've had a chance to look at any of the submitted testimony and so on, and make sure we're all comfortable with where we are. Is that reasonable?
Sure.
Okay. Tuesday at 9:30, Commerce is meeting, and we'll plan to exec it on Tuesday. I'm sorry, what? Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. With that, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 4. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All right. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Any questions?